All right, we are live. We had a little
All right.
technical difficulties there. I got nervous, but we are here. Happy Thursday to everyone. So we'll give it a minute to allow others to join and so we can share it. So definitely if you join, please share with others so they can be blessed by today's story with Janece. So is it coming up on your end?
Yes, it is coming up on my end.
All right. Okay, so we give it a few minutes.
Trying to share it.
All right. I think I'm starting this. And again, for those who are joining, please make sure you share and welcome. Trying to get in there. All right. All right, so I see some people coming on. I just said So I'm gonna go ahead and get started just to introduce S.H.E.R.O Spotlight. So for those of you who this is your first time, welcome to S.H.E.R.O Spotlight. You have been missing out. So my name is Alicia Perkins and I am a licensed clinical social worker. I've been working in the mental health field for over 20 years. So God gave me this vision around, I think it was around COVID in 2020, to really just start sharing like a S.H.E.R.O seed words of wisdom with people, because of course some people couldn't afford therapy, and during that time a lot of people needed help. So I started doing these S.H.E.R.O seeds, these short videos every Saturday, giving some words of wisdom. But then God gave me another vision to do the S.H.E.R.O Spotlight, because as a single mom, when I was going through my deepest, darkest moment, when I was dealing with depression, is when I was going through a divorce. And at that time, you know, me being a therapist, I'm thinking that I'm alone. I did not want to seek help. You would think that I would have because I'm a therapist, but I didn't want to do that. I thought I could, you know, resolve this issue on my own. And so I did finally seek therapy, and it really just changed my life. It helped me change things around. And so when I think of the word S.H.E.R.O, of course, you all know it's a female hero, but I created an acronym that helped me through my darkest moment in life. And so S stands for sacrificing for my child. H is healing from my past hurts. E is evolving into what God wants me to be. R is revealing my truth. And O is obtaining my goals and happiness, because those things is what helped me make it through, and me being accepting of being a single mom and pushing through. So why S.H.E.R.O Spotlight is so important, because I want other mothers to share their stories and let other people know out there that you're not alone when you go through these things and you can overcome them. That's the thing about it. And everybody's story has been different. And every female that I've interviewed have also been business owners, which is so amazing, because that was not what I intended, but that's what happened. That's what God had. And so I'm excited today to have my October S.H.E.R.O here with me, Janece Brake. Yay!
Hi.
So how I know Janece, she's my sister's friend. I will say my sister has a strong female friend circle. They are doing their thing. A lot of them are business owners. They're just absolutely amazing group. And so Janece is part of that group. And so I'm so glad that she decided to do my S.H.E.R.O Spotlight. I'm so happy to have her.
So happy to be here.
Tell the people a little bit about you. Where are you from?
Well, you know, I'm originally from North Carolina. I'm originally from New Jersey, but I consider myself a North Carolinian. I've been here since 1991, I believe. So
yeah.
I am a North Carolina girl, okay, through and through. And I went to school here most of my life. Met my husband here in college, and you know, been here ever since. I don't see myself living anywhere else.
Awesome. So I heard you say your husband. So how long have you all been married, and tell us about your kids?
All right. So we have been married for 11 years this September. And we have 3 kids. We have Jackson, he's 9. We have Sebastian, who's 3. And then we have our feisty, almost 2-year-old daughter, Sloan. So,
hey, the girl got to come through.
Yes. So busy life, especially the toddler world is chaos, but it's fun.
Yeah, bless your heart. I don't know how you're doing it with the toddlers. I'm like, I can barely handle one child, so I can't even imagine.
Pray for us toddler moms, okay? We are not okay.
For sure. And so Janece, when I talk to you, I just want you really to share your childhood with the audience today. tell us about, you're a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I grew up with a single mom. We grew up in North Carolina most of my childhood. We're originally from New Jersey. A lot of our family still lives there. Some have migrated south, but I was the oldest of three kids, and being the oldest, I feel like there is a lot more that you get visibility to than your siblings, right? Because you are the trial child. And so because of that, I learn, especially as I go day by day, I learn more and more about my mother from parenting right now in this phase of life. I learned that my mom, sacrificed a lot. She was a single mom of three kids, and it was not easy, especially my siblings. They were not easy children. It was, wild, but it's just, I saw that, and I saw my mom working hard, to take care of three kids. And I don't want to say this in a negative way, but it kind of, and also being the oldest, meaning you having to babysit and things like that. I didn't think that was my path. I didn't really see, I didn't value marriage. My mom, like I said, my mom was a single mom, and I didn't really, after babysitting my siblings, I didn't want kids. I wanted to be the rich auntie. That was like, I was like, look, if I got to take care of kids, this ain't for me. Okay. And so I started down that path of really just focusing on myself. And like I said, for me, marriage was just not something that I aspired to. And I think it's because when you come from a single parent, you see that strong mother mentality, that strong woman mentality of, woman taking care of her kids. And so I wanted to, go down the path of I'm a strong, independent woman. And so I said, all right, I'm going to go to college. And I did just that. And I was the first person in my family to go to college and graduate. I'm one of the first in my family to get a master's degree. And, it was funny. And I think I told you before, Alicia, when, this idea of I didn't want to get married and have kids. And here I am married for 11 years with three kids. And I said to you, I said, you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans, right? Because I met my husband when I was 19 years old. So I was still a child. And we got engaged very young, right out of college, and got married soon after and had a baby, right after that. And so, all the things that I said I did not want to do, I ended up doing. And I'm glad that I did, but it's just so funny now to look back at all the things I said. Oh no, I'm just going to travel and get this fancy career. And that was going to be my life. And now I am in the thick of toddlerhood.
And the world.
But it's funny how, like I said, God works, in your benefit, right? He knows what's best for you. And that is what I attribute my life being, how it is today, because, he already had the plan for me. I just had to execute based on what he was telling me to do.
Right. I like that. I see a lot of love in the chat here, and I see some of our past S.H.E.R.Os, Brianna and Elaine. I see y'all in the audience as well. So please share with us what motivated you to want to do or be something different than your circumstances. It's like you changed the narrative.
I think a part of it is, like I said, I saw the independent woman kind of pathway, and that was all I knew. So that is what I wanted to be. My mom used to take me to Take Your Daughter to Work Day back when I was a kid. And I loved those days because at work, I got to see her in her element. She was smart. She knew what she was doing. She got along with her office staff. And I was like, I want to do that. I want to be a career woman. I want to be, So in my mind, I knew that the only way to do that and to be successful, I needed to go to college. I needed to have a plan. I needed to go to college. And so that was the path that I set out for myself. I was like, I got to go to college to make money because, it's expensive to live out here on your own. So that's just kind of why I decided down that path. And like I said, I met my husband sophomore year, and he is a very driven person. He was older than me. He was a senior. I was a sophomore. And I love that he already had a plan. He already knew what he wanted to do, which made me, even more attracted to him, because you don't meet many college guys that have a plan, right? Have it together. They know what they want to do. And and he was on that path. And so for me, I was like, oh, okay, well, and he kind of motivated me because I saw how hard he worked. And I was like, hey, I got to pull my weight too. And so, that kind of independent woman mentality still stuck, but at least I had a partner who had that same mindset of let's go for it together and not just, by myself.
Right, exactly. So he was like God sent, would you say?
Yes, I would say yes. However, I will tell you a funny story real quick. So my husband, he asked me to be his girlfriend. Probably it was like we were on break from Thanksgiving in college.
Yeah.
And I remember going downstairs to my mom because he asked me to be his girlfriend. And I told my mom, I said, Mom, there's a guy on the phone who wants me to be his girlfriend. And she was like telling me how, oh, you never know what might happen, blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, but he doesn't like macaroni and cheese.
Oh,
Like almost a deal breaker for me. Okay. I was like,
right.
he has the smarts and everything else, but he doesn't
That is
like macaroni and
hilarious.
cheese. I can't trust him. So, but
He
luckily I
cannot
stuck
be
to my mom's
trusted.
advice, and I decided to give him a chance. And look where we are almost 16 years later. So.
Wow, that is too funny. So for someone who did come from a family that, like you said, you were the first to graduate in your family, how did you find the tools to know where to go though? Like to get into college, like, for someone who is not really sure, because, luckily for me, I had my mom, who was able to kind of help and be a support to me. But if you come from a family who really haven't experienced that, how do you gain the knowledge to know what to do and what steps to take?
Yeah, so I had to do a lot of research on my own, ask questions from, counselors. I think my school did a really good job because you had different tracks. And if you were on the college prep track, they kind of provided you a lot of resources on college applications and how that process works and how to fill out a FAFSA. And so I utilized those tools to, enroll, apply to college. And I already kind of knew what I wanted to do. And I looked into the schools that offered the programs that I wanted to get into, and that's where I applied.
I love that. Now I want you to share your motherhood journey.
Yes, that's a funny story because, like I said, I did not really want to be a mother at first. And, my husband and I, we had just gotten married, and, I think we were 8 months in, and we got pregnant with our first son, Jackson. And, it was definitely an easy pregnancy, or easier pregnancy, I will say. And it was just, I will say probably the first few years of marriage are already hard. And then throwing in the fact that you are a new parent, it definitely creates a lot of challenges. And so my first kid, I valued that time so much because I knew it was going to be hard. But my husband stepped up so much during that time that, for me, it was easier than I would say probably most first pregnancies and first, babies. And it was a very scary situation. When Jackson was born, his heart rate was dropping. So we had to go from, it was supposed to be, regular delivery to it now became an emergency C-section. And then from that, we learned that a lot of that was due to my lupus complications. And so it was just the first year of motherhood was interesting. It was difficult because you're learning to be a new parent. You're learning to parent. My husband did, he was working a crazy job, but he did his best. I mean, he took a lot of the night shift, and Jackson was luckily a very easy baby. And so, we decided we wanted to have another baby, a few years later. However, that journey took a turn because of my lupus. They were not sure if I could have any more children on my own, if it was safe to have any more kids on my own. And we went from being very hopeful to, we ended up having to go to Duke to see a specialist to even get the green light to have another kid. And I had to be on medications where I was not allowed to get pregnant, or it would hurt me or the baby. We may not survive. And so there was a very long time period, which is why there's such a huge gap between my two children, of, not even sure if we would be able to have another baby. And then when we did get the green light, we did get pregnant, which was awesome, but it resulted in a miscarriage. And so we spent our 7-year anniversary, I had a miscarriage. And that was probably the hardest time of my life. I will say that probably tested our marriage more than anything else, because, you get so excited about, having a baby and bringing this new life into the world. And then to go from that to there's no heartbeat. And, it just does something to you mentally, because you don't think of being so attached so soon. You haven't seen it, but I was, and I struggled a lot through that process. And I felt like my husband wasn't, he wasn't grieving like I was grieving. And so that made me angry. That made me very frustrated, angry. I'm like, how are you not as upset about this as I am? And I think for me and learning later and doing counseling and things like that, he was grieving, but in a different way. I think men, especially when they know that there's nothing they can do, they just try to act like they're okay, and try to keep things moving, right? Their job is to, take care of the home and keep things moving. And so he was doing what he knew to do. And for me, I was just kind of in my feelings of, why are you not crying and upset and angry? And he was, but he was just expressing it in a different way.
Right.
And so that was just, that time I look back and I mean, it was supposed to be a fun time too. Like I said, it was our anniversary.
Right.
We had just closed on our house. And so it was supposed to be an exciting time. We bought our house and I walked into one of the bedrooms and I was like, this is the baby's room. And then, to have a week later that being taken away, I was angry. I was frustrated. I was angry, and had to do a lot of therapy because of it. And, God works in mysterious ways, because I had some fertility struggles. We had a hard time getting pregnant again. A lot of times when you have lupus, there is a 50-50 chance of miscarrying. That is just the statistics with lupus. So, when we tried to get pregnant and it wasn't happening, I had to go to a fertility specialist, and had to go that route. We tried a few cycles, and, you get very discouraged your first time of a failed procedure. You think that you're so hopeful, you spend all this money and you're like, I'm at the mercy of these fertility doctors. You're going in for, you're getting shots, you're taking pills. So you're not in the right headspace. And then to find out it doesn't work, also just kind of adds to that stress of the whole process of trying to conceive. And, the funniest story I will say is, I was reading a book a long time ago called When God Winks at You. And it's a story of amazing people. A lot of them are famous people, but it talks about moments where they witness God in motion. Oh, wow. And I always said, man, I hope I have a God wink in life. I really do. And I had my God wink. And it was the most miraculous moment ever. I went to an Elevation concert with one of my friends, and we had just had, I think, our second or third procedure. So wasn't sure if it was going to work, but, it's just, I put my faith in that, in him, that it would happen, and, went about my week. And I was at the Elevation concert, and Travis Green was there, and he was talking about his son was born prematurely and they weren't sure if he was going to make it. And I'm already in tears, and they're playing, a song that I love in the background. And, I'm waiting to hear the ending result of the story, and Jeremiah 29:11 pops up on my phone. And it was as strong as somebody whispering in my ear, Janece, you need to test tomorrow. You need to test tomorrow morning. You need to test tomorrow morning. And one of my favorite songs, and Travis Green song, start singing, he said, I've seen you do it before, and I believe I'll see you do it again. Right. You made a way when there was no way. And I mean, it was just in my ear, the entire song, just Janece, you need to test. And so I woke up the next morning and I took a pregnancy test, and it was positive. Wow. And I was I was just in tears, because I could not believe it. I mean, because like I said, this is a 6-year gap of having my first child to my second child. And so I just, in that moment, it was just God telling me, this is your time. This is it. This is going to happen. So I was just blessed with our second son, Sebastian, and then COVID hit. So I had him, and things shut down, and we wanted to have another baby, because we were look, we're going to do it. Let's get this one done.
Right.
And the world shut down and they weren't doing fertility procedures anymore.
Mm.
And I was devastated because I, was getting ready to start another cycle. I was excited to try again. And the doctor was like, sorry, we're not allowed to do them anymore, or at least not right now when things are shut down. And lo and behold, a few weeks later, I got a positive pregnancy test.
Wow.
So it was just like, God had this plan that this is his timetable and he was going to make it happen regardless. So, my motherhood journey has been full of blessings. There's been ups and downs, there's highs and lows. There are definitely hard days. And like I said, I learned a lot from my mom because she did it as a single parent. And I could not imagine not having the help of my husband. He is like my right hand. There is no like, oh, I'm the man and I'm not, I'm only going to do this. I mean, it's a partnership. And so I really appreciate him for that. And, it's just, that's how motherhood has to be. It has to be a partnership. Parenthood has to be a partnership. And he understands kind of when I need a break. And, he does. He's everything.
Awesome. Yeah, I think we need to give more love to our husbands out there, especially the ones that are supportive. So let's give her husband, I think his name is Brandon, right?
Yes.
Some love. I want to see some hearts out there. I think Brandon is on. So that's amazing because sometimes you don't have men that's that supportive.
Yeah.
And so
like right now he's wrangling them 3 kids solo. So
that's
he
a
is
blessing
doing
in
it.
itself. So what would be some advice you would give a mother or either a couple that has dealt with a miscarriage?
I would definitely say you're not alone. I think it is one of the most isolating experiences ever to go through that, even though you hear other people. I mean, 1 in 4 women will miscarry, or 1 in 8, I believe is the statistic. And you feel so alone that you have no one to talk to. And I definitely encourage you to share your story, to speak up, to talk about it, to seek counseling, because you can't hold that kind of hurt in for a long time. It was a child. It was something that you had prayed about, thought about, that you wanted here, that you thought was going to be this, new life that was going to join your family. And that didn't end up happening, right? So you need to be able to grieve, and it's okay to grieve however you see fit, but definitely do not hold it in. Definitely go seek help, and talk to people who've been through it, because they can empathize.
Right. And speaking of that, you've dealt with a lot of tragedy and loss, from your father passing away to you having the miscarriage, and then you also dealing with mental health and medical issues. How do you still stand and keep going?
For me, I think it's really just leaning into God, right? Leaning into what I'm learning from him in each season of life, and trusting him in that, because I feel like for me, I can always tie a big event to a lot of my tragedies. I think I told you, like, my dad passed away the week of my college graduation. My grandmother passed away right after my anniversary. My great grandmother passed away the week before my wedding. And so if I let all those things keep me down, I mean, there's always going to be something. And so God has always given me the strength to pick up the pieces and continue on. And that's just what I have to do. Because he's telling me in those moments when I lose, someone I love, that life is short and you have to treasure every moment you have with the people you have, and keep going, because that's what they would have wanted me to do. So that's just kind of how I do. I listen to what he's trying to tell me in each season, and I just pray that, he's going to lead me through the next one.
Right. And so I nicknamed her on the introduction, Joyful Janece, because as you guys see, she's having hills and valleys, but she's counting it all joy, which I think is so amazing. And now I want to kind of shift to mental health. And so you've battled with mental health for a while. If you don't mind sharing, how long have you dealt with mental health issues?
I've dealt with mental health my entire life, to be honest, since I was a child. I think if I go back to childhood, I will say that I had a lot of insecurities. I did not have my father in the house. And so that kind of left me with a void of, did he love me and all these things? And so that was something that I struggled with, that self-love. And, it led to some depression. It led to me having self-esteem issues. I also was kind of quiet and shy, in my younger years. And so it was hard to figure out, how to become this woman and be this teenager when all these things are going through my head of, am I pretty enough? Am I good enough? Am I loved? All those things when I did not feel them, from certain people.
Right.
So I will say it started young. And then even as an adult, I struggle, I'll be honest, I struggled with postpartum depression. I struggle with anxiety and other mental health issues, depression. And I'm actually on medication. I just recently started medication for it. And it's just something that I deal with on a day-to-day basis, and I have to take it day to day. I try to think and start my day with, I'm going to have a good day. Regardless of what bad's happening, I try to say, all right, I'm still going to have a good day. And this is how I'm going to have a good day. I'll do something that brings me joy. Whether it's going to Starbucks, going to Target, whatever my therapy is for the day, which Target is frequently my therapy. I have to do what makes me happy at least once a day. And that's just kind of, what I do to keep myself going.
Right. Yeah, because being a therapist for a long time and working in mental health, that's, one thing I talk to clients about is accepting it, first of all. And because mental health is a disease as well. And accepting that, because if you were diabetic, you would have to take medications. It's kind of the same thing. It's just because it has that stigma to it, people just try to shy away from that or either think they can handle it on their own. But to bring that stability is to get the help that you need. If you need medication, some people don't, you need therapy, but finding what makes you feel at peace, find that peace.
Exactly.
That's the key. And so it seems like you have found your peace, like you said, doing certain things that make you happy and puts a smile on your face. Because the thing is, if you have a mental health diagnosis, doesn't mean you can't live a normal life. And what is normal? Like when people say there's no such thing as normal, trust me, there's no such thing as normal.
Right.
But to have that stability, that's okay. And so just being okay with that, that's step one, because the issues that I've had with clients over the years that continue to have some of the same recurring issues is the ones who don't accept it. But once you accept it and then know what you need to do to kind of be proactive, because if you're a person who deals with depression, these are some things, or if I start seeing certain signs, this is some things I need to do, some coping skills I need to use so I won't go there, that it won't get that severe. So there's things you can do once you really accept it and learn it, and then just gain knowledge. I have worked with, like I said, in mental health for a long time. You won't believe how many clients I ask. They'll say they have a diagnosis, and I'll be like, do you know what that means? They'll be like, no, I don't. So how can you treat something if you don't know what it is?
Exactly.
So that's why I always tell clients, first of all, you have to understand your mental illness to be able to and do things about it and really, live that stable life, because you can do it.
Exactly. And I think one of the best advice that I received from my therapist was, is it a glass ball or is it a rubber ball? She said, Janece, you put too much in that glass ball, and the glass ball, when it breaks, everything's over, right? So I used to put work in that glass ball, right? And she said, Janece, why would work be a glass ball? I was like, because, if I'm not doing a good job, I may get fired. She said, okay, if you get fired, what's the worst that will happen? You'll be unemployed.
Right.
But you'll find a new job, won't you? I was like, yeah. She's like, exactly. So is that really a glass ball? Can you bounce back from that? I was like, yeah. So she's like, that probably belongs in the rubber ball, because glass ball are things that once it drops and shatters, it's over. There's no putting it back together. There's no picking up the pieces. But a rubber ball, you can always bounce back from. So when you're going through things, you have to consider, is it a glass ball or is it a rubber ball? And 9 times out of 10, it's usually a rubber ball and something you can bounce back from.
Right. I absolutely love that. And I'm looking at the comments, a lot of people giving you love. Emily says yes, and giving yourself permission to restart your day at any point. Even if it gets off track at some point, and that's so good.
It's so true.
Yeah, because and a lot of people are running around with undiagnosed issues, and that's very true because they're afraid to seek the help. Also, Diane says she's so proud of you, baby girl. You're very strong. So a lot of people giving their love to you. And so, speaking of your husband, I know we touched on him a few minutes ago. With all the issues that you are dealing with and the trauma, that can really impact a marriage in a negative way. And that's really big too. I always tell people, couples, you have to work on you first. You can't expect going into a relationship and saying, oh, this person's going to complete me. No, you need to come in, complete, basically. That person's just adding to you. But when you're in a marriage already and when you're going through certain things, it can really impact a marriage. And I just want to share with everybody, because I like to give stats, everybody. I like to state facts. So in the United States, about 50% of married couples divorce. We are the 6th highest divorce rate in the world. Couples married between the ages of 20 to 25 are 60% likely to get a divorce. So you have surpassed that so far, and we hope that you continue. Those who wait until they are older than 25 to get married are 24% less likely to get divorced. And according to the U.S. Census Bureau survey, the top 3 reasons for divorces are incompatibility, which is 43%, infidelity, 28%, and money issues, 22%. So speaking of that, what keeps your marriage intact? What advice would you give someone who is struggling in their marriage, or someone who's thinking about marriage, or a newlywed couple?
I definitely say get counseling, get marriage counseling. I will say, even if things are good, I think there's always something to learn about your partner. I got married very young. I got married at 23 years old. So who I was at 23, I am not that same person today at 35. Who I was at 19 when my husband and I got together, and who I am today are not the same. And so as you are growing with people, growing older, both of you guys are changing. And so with that change, sometimes it's hard for the other person to accept, or sometimes things change. What they might have liked back then, they don't like anymore. Hobbies change, things that they want to do change. They may have had a plan to do this, and now they want to do this. And so communication is definitely key in that. And I think marriage counseling is something that everyone can benefit. Like I said, if things are going great or they're not. One thing that my husband and I learned in therapy was that, you really need to learn each other's love languages. I think we do a great job of catering to our own love language, but we don't know how to necessarily cater to our partner's love language. So if our partner's love language is words of affirmation and yours is gifts, you're probably great at getting him gifts, but you're probably not as great at giving him compliments, and vice versa. And so if yours is acts of service and he's buying you gifts, you want him to help out around the house, then, that's going to cause some friction, because that's not what you asked for. That's not what you need. And so learning kind of how to cater to each other's love languages. And then also, my husband and I have definitely, I'll be honest, we've had some very rough patches. Because like I said, we've been together 11 years, and some years are better than others, especially when you're trying to grow as parents and professionals and still have an identity outside of just being a wife or just being a mother. That causes additional challenges in marriages. And so I went to, at church, we had this marriage retreat or for women, and it was called Mrs. Better Half. And I remember that because things were not going great. We had done therapy and things like that. And I remember the pastor's wife had said during one of our sessions, she was like, be more like Jesus. And I was like, I don't want to be more like Jesus. I don't want to give anymore, And I am a Libra, and I am very stuck in my ways. So if I don't like something, I am great at the silent treatment. If I am not happy with you, I am great at that. My husband is the opposite. He will over communicate. I'm like, nah, I don't want to talk. And so she was like, be more like Jesus. And she didn't mean that in give, and don't expect anything in return. What she said was, if you are in a marriage and, you guys are at odds, and you're giving all that you have to that marriage, so you're being more like Jesus, and it doesn't work out, at least you can say that you did everything you could do. Right. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But at least you can say that you did everything you could do. And hopefully they'll meet you in the middle, and they will, or they'll show you who they are and you know what to do next. But it wasn't like give, and don't expect anything in return. It was try to be more like Jesus. And that way you can at least say that you did and gave your all to that marriage. And so when I started doing that, guess what? My husband, he met me halfway. And so that is definitely something that we had to work on, and we still work on. And sometimes, he's better at things, and, and he kind of pulls more of the weight and vice versa. And that's just how we operate. But I try to think when I'm in that situation and things are getting frustrated, I'm like, all right, be more like Jesus. especially now with 3 kids. We don't have a whole lot of time to, you know, talk and doing things. A lot of times it's about the kids. And so I have to, you know, try to think, all right, what can I do to give even when, you know, I don't necessarily feel like it, you know, or feel like he deserves it, you know?
Right. But I'm sure you have to have that balance too, you know, doing date nights and things like that, because you have a full-time job, you know, then being a wife or mom. I'm sure that's really tough. And so how do you find that time too? Because you don't want anything to be neglected.
Right. I will say we do a really good job with date nights. We've got some really good babysitters that kind of help us out, and we do date nights at least 3 times a month, usually, if not more. Or we'll try to do a day date, you know, Friday, go to lunch. We try to do lunch together. He works from home, I work from home. So we try to go to lunch once a week together if we can, and do date night at least once a week if we can, if it's not like a super busy weekend. But we always try to make time for each other and do something together. I am an early bed person. I go to bed early, but I do try at least once a week to stay up long enough to watch one show together. I do try that.
Okay,
but just
so sacrifice
things like that, you know, to try to stay connected and spend that time together is definitely important. And so, you know, it's been working for us. Like I said, we're both very busy professionals, but we do try to make each other a priority.
Right, for sure. And I think too, the biggest thing is communication, because even how you talked about earlier, when you didn't think he was grieving, he was just doing it his own way. So I think that's another thing too, because men and women, we think totally different.
Yes. We
So
overanalyze a lot, and we're like, wait a minute, why is he not crying? Why is he not lashing out? You know, am I crazy? You know?
So having that strong communication, but also like you were saying, you both gotta want it. And if you know, you both have that common goal and you both are fighting for it, you know, it can't do anything but flourish, because you both want it to flourish. And so so I just love that about your marriage and for your words of wisdom. And you said you've been married for 11 years, right? So that's a big thing. 19, y'all. She met him when she was 19.
Yes.
So,
19.
And like you said, you know, you guys have grown up together, basically. And so there are a lot of changes. So to see that you all are able to really have good communication, like you said, you know, going to therapy, spending that time together, that's big. And so now we're going to shift now to business. You are one of 2 at your company of Black leaders. And so I think that's amazing. And you have climbed the corporate ladder. And so before I kind of get into that, I want to ask the audience, do you all know who gets paid the lowest in corporate America, or just in general, who gets paid the lowest? Put it in any guesses? I don't see anyone yet. So who do you think gets paid the lowest? Is it male, female, black male, black female, white female? Who do you all think? Emily says minority women, Black women. Right. It is Black women. And again, I got some stats because I feel like we got to have knowledge. So Black women on average is paid 58 cents for every dollar earned by men. Women of all races working full-time in the US are paid 83 cents to every dollar earned compared to men. And according to the National Women's Law Center, which is a policy-focused organization that fights for gender justice, the wage gap costs Black women $1,891 a month, $22,692 per year, and a staggering loss of $907,680 over a 40-year career. So over $900,000 over a 40-year career. So we would never catch up. So Black women who start working at age 20 would have to work until she's almost 80 years old to earn what a white non-Hispanic man is paid by the age of 60.
That is crazy.
And then the other thing I found that was alarming, that Black women enroll in college at higher rates than any other group. However, a report found the gender pay gap is largest for Black women who have a bachelor's degree. So that's some deep stuff. And so Janece is passionate about this, like I am as well. And I just really want you to talk about how you climb the corporate ladder, and let's talk about how do you negotiate or ask for more pay?
I think The number one advice I would give to somebody when it comes to trying to climb the corporate ladder is find a mentor. Find somebody who does what you want to do and definitely lean on them, right? Ask them all the questions, all the hard questions. I've had the same mentor for 8 years now. And she has given me some of the best advice ever on how to grow in my career, how to not accept less. And so, that has been my driving force of learning what she did to get where she was and try to mirror that. And I definitely recommend everybody to try to find a mentor and ask them, how do I do this? How do I get into that space? And take notes. I think one of my very first internships that I did to graduate college, I worked with the CEO of an insurance company. And the first thing he said to me was, Janece, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And so he said, every day, my first thing when I get to the office, I write a list of everything I need to do for that day. Now, do I get through all of it? No. But I write down that list because I have a plan, and then I try to execute each thing on my list. And so I do that every single day. I create a list of what I need to get done, and I try to work through that list. I found mentors and found people that I admired and talked to them, and I still talk to them, and I just figure out kind of how to build my network to get to where I want to go. And so that kind of led me to the opportunity I have right now. As a leader at my company and one of the only Black leaders. And, it definitely has helped me as far as visibility because, there's not a lot of us around. But I will say, as far as kind of also negotiating and things like that, that is super important. That is something I'm very passionate about. And previous career, I learned that the hard way of not asking for what I wanted. And learning, first day that I was getting paid way less than what I could have been getting paid because I accepted the first offer without trying to negotiate. And so my other advice is when you're trying to negotiate salary, never give them a number. Ask them what the budget is. Ask them what what they're able to pay. Look at all the benefits. So what does that include from an equity standpoint? What does that include from PTO, healthcare benefits? You got to factor all those things into what that total compensation package is going to look like. And then from there, you can kind of determine where you fall based on what you want, what your skill sets are, and go back to the table and do not accept the first offer. White males never accept the first offer. So you shouldn't either. You need to ask for what you're worth and definitely put it out there, because if they lowball you, that means that they do not value you. And so you may not want that opportunity anyway. But definitely, I say negotiate. I definitely did. And for me, I definitely am very happy with my compensation package. And I definitely encourage, especially as I try to move up the corporate ladder, speak up. I learned that being quiet never got me anywhere. There's a way to do it professionally, obviously, but speak up. If I was always quiet and shy, nobody would see me. Nobody would hear me. I wasn't visible. I'm already a Black woman. So they already don't think the same as, my white counterparts. But if I speak up and I have value to add, I'm able to get my point across, somebody is bound to listen. And so that's kind of how I've been able to grow and make it to, where I'm at today. I still have future career goals, but that visibility is definitely something that you need to have in order to be seen and to be heard.
Right. Because sometimes I've struggled with that as well. And then just showing up as my authentic self.
Right.
Sometimes I want to show up in the boardroom with my big hoop earrings on, and then, with me having locks, I have to be mindful of how that looks, and that can kind of take away, am I being authentic in who I am? And that's a struggle in the corporate America. And so it's good to hear that you can be authentically you and still climb up and to speak up. And so I just really like what you said, and just not being afraid, because sometimes I've been afraid as well to ask for what I want, because I'm like, what if they don't give it to me, or wonder if they, I get passed up on this opportunity. And recently this kind of came to my into fruition just earlier this week, was that someone wanted me to do a speaking engagement, and they had a very low price. And I'm like, but the exposure is really great because I'll be speaking at a very large conference and stuff. And I'm like, but I don't want to take this low pay. The more I thought about it and the things they were asking for me to do. And so I was afraid to speak up, but I did. And then I did get more, and it could still, kind of impact, me for future engagement, speaking engagement, but that's okay because somebody else will give me that opportunity because I didn't want to sell my soul. And I'm passionate about the things I do and speak on, that I didn't want anyone just using my stuff for profit and I get nothing out of it at the end of the day. So there are times we get conflicted with that, because it's like, am I going to lose out on this opportunity? Should I say it? But also for me, I've done my research too. Before I go in or asking for more money, I do kind of look what the going rate is or what the salary is. But I like what Janece said, because she's educated me today, is don't tell them a number. Say, what is your budget? And go the highest.
Yes, that's what I learned, okay, from Meg the Stallion.
I love that. Yeah, because we have to really know our worth and we have to ask for more, because people will use you as long as you allow.
Exactly. So, don't sell yourself short, name your price and add tax, because all those things take time. I learned that even with social media, as a content creator, when brands would reach out to me and offer me product, and I'm like, but this takes my time. This takes away from my family and things that I want to do. So no, I'm not going to accept your lowball offer or just product. You need to compensate me fairly. And if I push back and tell them what what my rates are, and they say we can't do it, then it wasn't for me, and that's okay. Because I will find somebody who is. Or sometimes I've had it happen recently, where they're like, oh, okay, if that's your rate, we good. But their initial offer was way less. So you have to, stick to it and definitely stand firm, because they want to see that confidence too. They want to see that you know what you're talking about and that you can bring value. And if you sell yourself short, then you're only, shorting yourself, right? Because they're going to still profit.
Right, exactly. Now, what would you tell someone who has been on the job for a while and is looking to either, get more money or get promoted? What would you tell them? Because sometimes it's harder when you're already in the position and trying to get more money.
Oh, yeah. So, and I have, I had this situation happen previously as well. And I learned a hard lesson of speak up, definitely speak up. If you feel like you are qualified to do more and you deserve that promotion, speak up, because by not speaking up, you are definitely missing out on opportunities. And I think I told you before this, my boss, I had a previous boss tell me when I definitely approached him about a promotion, it was like, oh yeah, you do deserve a promotion. I just didn't think about it. And you should have been promoted 2 years ago. And I never asked because I was afraid, I had just had 2 babies back to back. And I was like, oh, well, I just was on maternity leave, but I had deserved to get promoted 2 years ago. But because I never spoke up, it didn't happen until, I was getting ready to walk out the door, and they're like, oh, we want you to now do this director position. And I'm like, too late, I'm on my way out. So you definitely have to, speak up, and you have to understand that you are valuable, you add value. And if you feel like you are not being valued, then it is time to go. It is time to find something different, find somewhere that will value your time, value your work, and compensate you for that. And sometimes we stay in positions because we're comfortable. And sometimes in order to challenge ourselves or change our position, we have to be comfortable with the uncomfortable. And so if you're in that state right now where you're like, oh, but this is a cushy job, but I know I deserve more, and they're not giving it to you, well, then it's time to, freshen up that resume and find somewhere that will pay you and treat you, what your value is. And I bet you your current employer will probably be like, oh, wait, we found these dollars for you, right? Because they're always willing to find dollars to walk out the door. But at that point, why didn't you pay me that before is the question I would ask. And so don't be afraid to speak up and say, hey, I've been doing this, show what you've done, obviously, and say, hey, I deserve, this. And if they're not willing to do it, well, then it's time to see what's next.
Right. And I have a friend who's a director, and one time she told me, she was like, closed mouths don't get fed.
Very true.
And she was like, and when you're asking for more, the worst thing they could say is no.
Exactly.
And like Janece said, then you might want to then consider going somewhere else. And to be
Mhm.
honest, a lot of times when you're leaving a company, you usually can get higher at another company. So that's why a lot of people can jump, saying the pay scale when they move on to another company.
Exactly.
That is always something to think about. It don't feel like you're boxed in. Look outside of the box.
Exactly. And a lot of times we stay in positions that, too long. And so we kind of hurt ourselves from a financial standpoint, because if you are not getting, an increase of whatever, you're losing money, right? You're not making that money. Inflation, I mean, it's expensive to live.
Right.
And if the rate of inflation is 6% and you only got a 2.5% increase, well, guess what? You just lost money. So, those things need to be taken into consideration. And I get it, it's not always about money, but it is about your value and your time, right? So you have to take into account, are you happy? Is your flexibility good? And, do you feel like you're being paid, fairly? All these things have to be taken in consideration, obviously, before you make that decision to leave. But definitely, if you are not treated as a valuable player, then it's definitely time for you to find something else.
Yeah, and I so agree too, like you were saying earlier too, about time. Time, I don't think we realize how valuable it is. Time is money at the end of the day.
It is.
So
and time is something you can't get back.
Right. You cannot get it back. So you have to really be good stewards of your time. How are you going to use your time? Is it productive? Because some days I think to myself, like, today was not a productive day. You know what I'm saying? I did not use my time.
We all have those days.
So be a good steward of your time. And so we're coming to the end. So I just want a couple of questions I have just for some words of wisdom. How do you find yourself in the midst of being a mother and wife? Because sometimes we lose ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, and I will tell you, my outlet for that has been, for me, my social media page. So I create mom content. Usually it's on the humor side, to kind of put out there what I love. I love being funny. Like, my friends will tell you, I love joking around. I love being silly. I was in theater in high school and even in college. And so I love, acting and just being funny. And that's how I can stay connected to who I truly am. I love to tell jokes. I'm just that type of person. When my friend groups will, they'll tell you, I'm just the person who's going to always try to make you laugh. And so I just play on that and use that to my advantage to make other people laugh. And then I always do stuff that I like to do, right? Whether it be going through Target aisles, just roaming the aisles and putting random stuff in my cart that I don't need. Just don't tell my husband. But, I do that. I try to find time for joy. I try to find time for things that I truly love. I love going out with my friends. I try to stay connected with them and do happy hours when I can, or do a girls trip, because those things keep me as me. That takes me out of the motherhood, that takes me out of the wife title, and just keeps me as me.
Right.
And I think, a lot of my friends appreciate it, because, I don't talk about motherhood all the time when I'm out with them. I like to talk about, other things. What are we watching on TV? Just life, and I think people have to understand that it's so easy to lose yourself as a mom and as a wife. It's the easiest thing, because that thing that consumes you, right? That becomes part of your identity. But your kids grow up, and what they see is how they are going to be as an adult. So if I am only spending time on them and taking care of them, then they will have a hard time understanding how to take care of themselves when they get older.
That's a good point.
And so I have to be that example. I also have a daughter. So I want her to see that she can be independent and strong on her own, whether she has a partner or not, but she needs to learn who she is. And she can see that from me, because I'm going to always be me and take care of myself. And so that way she's able to mirror that. And same for my boys.
Right. And I know that some moms struggle with that. And, like you said, you take trips without the children. So do I. I'm an advocate for that, because sometimes you just want to be an adult. You don't want to be mom, like you said.
Exactly.
So what would you tell those mothers?
You got to find time to be you.
Right.
You got to find the time. You only get so many hours in the day, and life is so short. that you have to find time to be just you, to find out who you are. And, you know, it changes over time. What you liked at 20, you may not like at 30, and that is okay. And you need to find a village, find people who will bring out the best in you.
Right.
Find people who will support you no matter what. Find people who will be honest with you. Find people who will lift you up, who will pray with you, who will do whatever they can to be a support system,
Right.
but also, you know, appreciate their own individuality in their own time, you know, because you don't need somebody, you know, you don't need yes people in your corner all the time, right? You need people who are going to say, yeah, girl, that was not smart. Let's not do that again, right? You just need those kind of people, but you also need those people who are gonna, when you're crying or having a bad day, they're the first ones that are gonna be there and, you know, say, hey, we gonna make it through. Let me pray for you. Let me support you. My kids had COVID, I don't even know how many times, and I can't tell you how many times they brought me wine or cards and candy for the kids. You know, those kind of things matter. And so having that kind of village that you can call and just talk to, and have friends that are kind of all over the spectrum. You know, I think a lot of times people are like, oh, because you're married, you only have married friends. No, I have friends who are single, friends that are married, friends that are divorced. Right. You know, having the different perspective definitely helps because it keeps you in a position to always be open-minded to things, and be understanding and be empathetic of people who are not always in the same situation as you.
Right. So definitely moms out there, give yourself permission to just do you.
To do you, okay? Your kids want to see that. They need to see mom being happy, mom being healthy, mom being, you know, doing things for herself, mom being her.
Right. And I do want you to promote your social media page, because Janece is a content creator that she was sharing. So tell us a little bit more. I know you said you told us a little bit about it, that you do the reels and stuff, and from a mother's perspective, a working mom's perspective. And so share that with them so they would know how to follow you on Instagram.
Sure. I'm on Instagram and TikTok at Give Me a Break, BRAKE, because that's my last name, 0918. And, you know, I have different topics about motherhood, about, you know, being a working mom. I do post funny reels every now and then. Right now, I've just been busy with work, so I just haven't had as much time to do that. But, you know, I do post topics all the time about motherhood and relatable things. And I also, you know, do that on TikTok too. But, you know, it's just another outlet for me to kind of find other women who are going through similar things and be able to share in those stories and be like, okay, I'm not alone.
Right. And I'll put that in the chat for everyone. So definitely follow her. I love your reels. I think they're so funny.
Thank you.
And so how have you dealt with failure? Because a lot of times we struggle with that too, as mom and in business, dealing with failure.
So I will say this, and I saw S.H.E.R.O talk about this earlier today, and I 100% agreed. I have not dealt with failure because failure for me means it's over. Failure means it's the end. You know, life is not a multiple choice test. Life is not a right or wrong. You always have the opportunity to start over. You know, tons of entrepreneurs and business owners fail lots of times before they get a successful business. And so if they give up, then yes, that is considered failure because they don't try again. And so for me, I haven't failed because I'm still kicking, I'm still standing. And if I need to pivot, guess what? That's what I'll do. If that's what God wants me to do, you know, that's what it is. But there's no such thing as failure until you give up and throw in the towel.
Failure is not final. I love it.
Not final.
And then last thing is, do you feel you're living in your purpose, and what do you foresee for your future?
I do think I'm living my purpose. My purpose is to, you know, continue to grow into the woman that I am meant to be. And I still am learning who she is. I feel more and more confident as the years go by as far as who I am and who I want to be and who I want my children to see me as. And so I am a work in progress, taking it day by day to be whoever God wants me to be. And for my future, I just want to be happy. You know, like I said, my kids are going to grow up, they're going to grow old, they're going to start their own families and have their own lives. And I need to be okay with that, you know, that one day they won't need me as much. And I need to be okay with, they'll have all the tools that my husband and I gave them to be just, to be fine without us. And then I can get my life back.
Yes.
I tell my husband all the time, I'm like, look, as soon as they're, old enough and out of the house, I'm going on vacation. I am going to be, they're gonna have to call me, where you at, Mom? I'll be like, I'm in Hawaii this week. I'll catch you in 2 weeks. But they need to be okay with that, right? They need to be okay with independence and see their mom in that light. And so that's kind of what I want them to see. And, for my boys, when they decide to find someone one day, I hope they be like, man, my mom was able to, give me all the tools I needed to stand on my own and take care of my family. And I also understand that from a woman's perspective, I need to allow my wife to do the same.
Right.
And for my daughter, I want her to feel confident in who she is and love herself for who she is, and understand that, she does not have to do it alone. If she chooses to get a partner, great. If not, then that is also okay. There is no right or wrong path in life. Like I said, I didn't want kids, didn't want to get married. And if that was my journey, if that was, then that's okay. And,
right.
there's society puts all these things that we should be doing as women. And I just want my ultimate goal is for her to find peace and happiness. And I want the same for my boys.
All right. Yes. Yes. I love it all. And it's so funny. You sound like me. I be counting down the years. I'm like, I'm moving to an island somewhere.
Somewhere. Look, I'm looking at real estate.
Somewhere I'm going.
Country.
So we're going to stop here to see. We see a lot of love in the chat from the audience. Does anyone have any questions for Janece? Because this is an interactive interview. So I want to see if anybody has any questions for her in the audience. If so, you can go ahead and type it in. And so while you're typing it in, we're going to be giving away a gift.
Yes.
And I'll let Janece tell us what the gift is.
As a lover of coffee, I am giving away a Starbucks gift card because I frequently visit there, and I feel like every mom, especially, or any person really, could use a pep in their step. So
yes,
I'm giving away a Starbucks gift card.
Yes, amen to that. So how this goes is we're going to ask a question based on our conversation today. So of course, if you're one of the people who've been on the live the whole time, you might have a better chance of winning, depending on the question we ask. But whoever responds with the correct answer in the chat, it cannot be abbreviated, it has to be spelled correctly, is the winner. And so Janece, I'm going to let you be the one who come up with the question.
All right.
And it's based off on something we talked about or something you shared today.
All right. So the question is, this is a simple one, very easy. How many children do I have?
That was an easy one.
That is a super easy one. And if you hear them in the background yelling, you probably think it's 10, but it's not.
All right, so let's see. Drum roll. 3 says Karen. Is that who you got on yours too first?
Yep, I see Karen Swain. Yes.
So Karen, do you know Karen personally?
I do. Actually, She is one of my second mamas.
Yay, so then you can give it to Karen. Make sure she gives you your gift card now, Karen, remind her.
I will.
So yeah, everybody's coming through with the answers, but yeah, Karen is our winner. Yay!
Yay! Love you, Karen.
I definitely want to thank everybody who joined us tonight, who stayed on, and the support and the love. Janece, I just want to thank you for being my S.H.E.R.O for this month. It was an honor having you on here. Really enjoyed your story, and I just thank you so much. And so, Janece, I want to say to you, you are a S.H.E.R.O.
Thank you so much
for your children. You have healed from your past hurts. You're evolving into what God wants you to be. You have revealed your truth here today, and you out here obtaining your goals and happiness.
Yes, thank you so much.
I'm here for it.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm so happy to join you guys and be able to share my story.
This was awesome. So if this was a blessing to you all tonight, definitely share it on your page so people can watch the replay. Because again, the ultimate goal for S.H.E.R.O Spotlight is to help those and others, as many people as possible that may be going through the same thing. So we just want people to hear Janece's story because it was so empowering and inspiring. And I hope that you all got a lot out of this tonight. I see the love. So
thank you all
so much. And so continue, if you don't follow my page, definitely follow it. Follow Janece's page, continue to get the reels and her funny sense of humor. I love it. So make sure you continue to support both of us. We really appreciate you all tonight. And we hope you all have a great night and tune into the
Thank
next
you
She-Ro
so much.
Spotlight. All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.